Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I am going to be sharing some Garden Inspired Farmhouse DIYs. Let's get right into it. Our first DIY is going to be a thrift flip. I received this kettle from my mom and I could see that it had huge potential. I'm going to start off by removing the handle, as I won't be needing that part and I won't be needing the lid either. So once you have that removed, you can then start to use some gesso. Now I love to use gesso. It's a primer and it works really well to prep a surface for craft paint. A lot of times craft paint doesn't adhere very well. I don't know if you've ever noticed that before, but it definitely chips off when I use it. So I love to use gesso first. So I add a coat all over the kettle and allow it to dry well. Once your gesso is all dry, you can then use some craft paint in the color of your choosing. I'm using cream and it's kind of like an antique white color. I give the kettle 3 coats of my craft paint and allow it to dry well in between coats. So my paint is all nice and dry and now I'm going to start to decorate it. I am using this beautiful napkin. As you can see, it's got beautiful garden roses and I'm going to remove the plies from underneath. This is a 3-ply napkin. You could use any pattern you'd like and you could also use tissue paper if you'd like, or fabric, wrapping paper. But I'm choosing to use this napkin. So I am going to tear out the images that I want to use. I have this beautiful butterfly, and as you can see, it's got a really nice rough raw edge, and that's what I'm going for. So I'm going to continue to tear out the images I'd like, and then I will show you the next step. So I have a stack of the roses and some butterflies, and now I'm going to be using a matte decoupage glue. You could use Mod Podge as well, but I really like the Deco Art brand or the Artist Mind brand from Michaels. So now I'm just going to figure out my placement for my images. This is completely up to you and it depends on the type of pattern that you are using. I am loving this gardeny look and I love these little butterflies. They're so beautiful. So once you have the placement figured out, you can start to add some decoupage onto your kettle or any surface that you're using, and then gently place your napkin over top. As you can see, I just gently press it into the glue and then I'll go over top with my decoupage glue. And if you miss some spots underneath, you can just take your paintbrush and gently go underneath, and that will just help give you a bit more glue underneath, and then you can continue to seal it all in. So as you can see, this one I've got it kind of wrapping around where the handle will be. I wanted to do that so it had a bit more of a cohesive look. And then I just continue to add my glue until it's all covered and I've created a beautiful pattern all over my kettle. I have torn some smaller little pieces so I could have some that are around the spout as well as the upper lip of my kettle. I just find that that just helps to have a cohesive pattern all over my kettle. So once you have the desired pattern that you'd like, you can go in and give the entire piece a coat of your decoupage glue. That will help seal any raw edges down as well as seal up the craft paint. You'll want to be gentle with the application over your napkin as you don't want to create any smudges, as I accidentally did at one point, but I was able to fix it. So just be careful when you are going over top of the napkin still with your paintbrush. Once you've given it a coat of your decoupage glue, you can set it aside and allow it to dry well. Here it is all dry, and now I'm going to create my handle. You'll need wood beads, some tools, along with a sturdy gauged wire and your hot glue gun. Now, I'm trying to find a bead that will fit over those holes, as you can see there, and I've got a medium and a large size bead. And I'm going to create a loop using some rounded needle nose pliers, and I'm going to create that hoop to fit inside the hole where my handle was. Now, I did have to do kind of some manipulating and some figuring out here, but I wanted that so then my hot glue had something to grip onto and help to hold that wire into place. So now I'm going to string on my beads in my desired pattern. You could use any beads you'd like. You can paint these or stain these if you'd like, but I wanted the raw wood color to match the rest of my pot. So once you've got your placement figured out, you can then generously apply some glue inside the hole and press that wire inside. Now the glue is going to surround that wire and help to hold it in place. I'm just adding another little dab of hot glue and placing that bead over top, and there you can see that it's all covered up. So now I am going to do the same thing on the opposite end of my wire. I'm just removing some of the beads as I found that it was just a little bit too bulky. And again, this just kind of takes some playing around with, but I did figure it out and it worked really well in the end. And here is the wood bead handle. I love how it turned out. Now here is our kettle all dressed up with some greenery. I love how this is so gardeny and fresh and farmhouse, perfect for some summer and spring home decor. So I am so excited as today's video is part of Heidi Sonboul's Friend Friday Hop. I'm going to have the next link to the video you want to see next down in my description box below. You're going to want to continue to click through all the links until you loop back here to my channel. So I'm doing another thrift flip for this DIY. I find wood bowls at the thrift store all the time and I love them. I'm going to give this bowl again a coat of gesso. I wanted to cover up this slick surface as well as cover up this dark stain. I do end up having to add 2 coats of the gesso, and I allow it to dry well in between coats. I'll give a coat of the gesso on the outside as well as the inside of the bowl. So the gesso has dried well, and now you can go in and add your favorite craft paint color. I'm going with this lush foliage green from Deco Art. I love this color. I think it's so beautiful for spring and summer. So I'm going to give this bowl 3 coats of the paint. I'm going to do the outside of the bowl as well as the edge, and I'm going to be doing something different on the inside of this bowl. I do end up giving it 3 coats of the paint. So now I'm going to do the inside. I'm going to be using this dark gray. I picked up this dark gray at Michael's, and I'm going to give the inside of the bowl 2 coats of the gray paint. Allow it to dry in between coats. So here it is all nice and dry. And now I'm going to go in and using a makeup sponge, I'm going to apply some silver paint. Now, if you dab it on, it gives it a bit more of a textured look, and I'm wanting to create a galvanized tin look. So as you can see, I'm just dabbing it and it's really creating a really neat texture. I'm being careful when I apply it around the edge. I will have to go in and touch up in spots, but you can see how a bit of the dark gray is showing through underneath. I just love how that is looking. I think it's such a cool technique. So here you can see I'm just touching up the edges here with my beautiful green paint. I think it's such a pretty gardeny color. I love it so much. It's so fresh. Now I'm going to be using some rub-on transfers from Dollar Tree. I love these rub-ons. They're so beautiful. I'm going to be cutting out the roses and some butterflies and flowers from this selection. And then I'm also going to be cutting out some of the greenery from the other selection of rub-ons. You can use anything you'd like on this, but I really loved this garden look. So once you have your images cut out, you'll need a craft stick, and I've got some scissors just set aside here just in case I need to trim some more. Here I'm just kind of figuring out a basic placement for my images, but it doesn't really matter. You can just do whatever you'd like, but I'm gonna start to layer my pieces on the inside, and using my craft stick, I'm going to rub onto the transfer. And then you can just kind of lift it to check to make sure you've got a good transfer happening, and I do. So I just continue to layer my pieces. Rub-ons are so much fun to use. I don't know if any of you have used them yet, but if you see them in Dollar Tree, definitely pick them up. They are a lot of fun. So you can apply as many of these transfers as you'd like. You could use tissue paper if you'd prefer, but one thing I do recommend is adding some varnish over top. That will help to seal in the rub-ons and protect the surface. So I give the entire bowl a coat of my varnish, let it dry, and then you've got a beautiful garden inspired decor piece. I'm so in love with this. I am so happy with how it turned out. So I'd like to welcome you all to CreArtive by Nature DIY and Decor. My name is Donna. If you love nature-inspired DIYs as much as I do, then you'll definitely want to stick around and tap on that subscribe button along with the bell to keep up to date with everything I have to share. You can join me over on Instagram as well. Link is down in my description box. For this next project, I dove into my stash of scrap fabric and I found this beautiful piece that's got these beautiful garden roses, and I'm going to be cutting some strips of about 1.5 inches, and I'm going to just scrunch them up to create a raw edge. Now you'll need several pieces. I love this fabric, it's so beautiful. You'll also need a tin from the recycling bin. This is a literal trash to treasure. So I'm going to be wrapping this tin up with these strips of fabric. You'll need a little dab of glue to start, and then you're going to start to wrap your fabric around. Apply a little bit of hot glue here and there along the way just to help hold your fabric into place. So I'm going to just continue to wrap the fabric around the tin. When you get down to the end, like here, you're going to gently start to bring your fabric down, and then you're going to continue to work around your tin. Once you get down to the bottom, you just want to continue to add your strips of fabric until you've got that bottom edge all covered up. You can trim off the excess and then glue that into place. And then I'm going to flip my tin upside down and trim off all that excess fabric that's on the bottom. And then you can start to decorate the inside. So now I'm going to create a beautiful garden bouquet using some faux florals. These ones are from Dollar Tree, and then I also have some from a store called Dollarama. And what I like to do is just trim down the stems, but I like to separate the wires, and then I just kind of interweave them amongst each other. I don't always cut these pieces apart. I just create a beautiful bouquet, and it looks like I've gone out to the garden and picked these stems. There's no right and wrong here, just be creative with what you have. So once you have the desired look, you can put your bouquet in your tin and leave it at this, but I like to go one step further. Here I'm just adding a few more of the white flowers just to help break up the color a little bit, but I also always love to add a touch of nature. So I have these branches that I collected, and I'm just going to stick a few sprigs in amongst my flowers. I just love this look so much. I think it makes a faux bouquet look a lot more realistic. And here we have this beautiful farmhouse garden inspired bouquet arrangement. So for our next farmhouse DIY, I'm going to be using these large wood beads, and you'll need some tissue paper. You want a smaller floral pattern and some matte decoupage glue and some paintbrushes. Now this tissue paper is from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to tear out the images. As you can see, I have my wood bead on a paintbrush. I'm using the paintbrush as my holder, as I'm going to be decoupaging these little pieces onto the wood bead. So here I'm just applying my decoupage glue, and then you're going to want to press the tissue all over the wood bead. So you can see how I'm pushing the tissue paper down and around the bead so it forms around our wood bead. And I do have quite a bit of the decoupage glue on here. I'm tearing some smaller pieces of the tissue paper, and I'm going to continue to add some glue and then layer my pieces of tissue onto the bead. Once your bead is covered with the tissue paper, you're going to want to go in and give the entire bead a coat of your decoupage glue. I like to then just kind of push the tissue paper in and around so the hole isn't blocked off. And then using a jar, I place the paintbrush inside and allow it to dry well. Here is my wood bead all dry. And then for the next step, you're going to need a wood tag. And again, I am going to decoupage this beautiful floral tissue paper. I think it's just such a beautiful pattern. And I'm going to apply the pieces of tissue onto the tag. Again, same idea. You're just going to layer your pieces over top of each other until your tag is covered, and then you'll set it aside to dry. I do both the front side and the back side of the tag. Before I do the back side of this tag, I just trim off any of the excess once it has dried, and then I continue to cover the other side. I'm just poking a hole through just to make sure that I don't seal up that hole, as we are going to need that hole. Now I'm going to be using this beautiful green hemp twine, and I'm going to create a tassel. Now I'm sure you've seen tassels created many different ways. I just wrap it several times around my fingers, and then I'm going to use a really long piece and tie it through the loops as shown here. And then I'm going to take an extra piece, and I am going to first off cut through all my loops, and then taking that extra piece of twine, I'm going to tie it around the top to keep my cluster all together. I'm just adding a touch of hot glue just to reinforce that knot, and there we have our tassel. So now I'm going to be using some tape, and I am going to wrap it around on the opposite end of our long piece of twine. And this way here, it'll be easier to thread on our beads. So as I'm sure you know by now, we're going to be creating a wood bead garland. I have never made a wood bead garland, and I haven't seen anybody do decoupage beads before. So I thought this would be really beautiful and fun for a garden inspired farmhouse look. So I'm using these dark stained wood beads that I picked up from the thrift store. I think they're so beautiful. I really like the shape. And I had created a pattern where I went 3 of the wood stain and then 1 large decoupage bead. So I'm just twisting my bead over top of that extra little twine piece, as you can see here, and that will help hold it all into place. And then I continue to thread all my wood beads on until I have the desired length. So I have the desired length of my wood bead garland, and now I'm going to be adding my wood tag. But first I want to add this beautiful laser cut wood embellishment. I've seen these both at Dollar Tree and Dollarama. I just used some hot glue to attach it. I'm just creating a cohesive look for my wood bead garland. Now I'm just going to tie on the tag to the opposite end of my garland. And there we have a beautiful garden inspired farmhouse wood bead garland. For our next garden inspired project, I grabbed this garden rock from Dollar Tree, and I thought it was so beautiful. I am going to give it 2 to 3 coats of this cream colored craft paint. I didn't seal it off with any gesso this time. I found that the craft paint actually adhered really well to this garden rock. And as you can see, I'm getting the paint in all the little nooks and crevices, and see, it took really well. So now I'm going to give this entire garden rock a coat of some varnish. I need to seal up the craft paint at this point before I do my next step. Once you have given your rock a coat of the varnish, allow to dry well. Once dry, you can then go in and add some stain. I'm going to be using this walnut stain from Deco Art, and you'll need a stiff bristle brush as well as a rag, and you're just going to dab the stain into all the little nooks and crevices, as you can see here. And using a rag, you'll want to wipe off any of the excess. This will create a really kind of earthy, grungy look, like an old weathered rock that you would find in a garden. I love how this is turning out. This stain works really well for this particular technique. Continue to add as much stain as you would like until you get this beautiful decorative garden rock. As always, I would absolutely love to know which one was your favorite. Check out this next video for some more nature-inspired DIYs. I want to thank Heidi and my fellow creators, and thank you all for being here. Don't forget to click the link for the next person in the hop.